The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
Table when we got here, so I may repeat something. Would like to add a report from the Rubbish Committee.
Okay. We'll put that on board's business.
All right. We, of course, have the cemetery matter on the agenda. Would like to, in light also of a letter that I have just found on the table, move that to executive session.
Cemetery item. Okay.
That would be Roman numeral 7, A and B, to executive session.
Okay.
Also, as part of executive session, would like to discuss a personnel matter. Would also like to add to the agenda under board business two items there. One, well, we'll just add one item and it'll be two parts. The retention of Butler Snow Law Firm, specifically Tommy Carden and related attorneys, to deal with the submission to justice of the report required for change in polling places. And as also part of that, but a separate motion, a motion relative to this change in polling places. And I think that gets the items I was going to add.
The item K would be added to board business. We have any other changes to the board business? With those additions, I'll repeat them, that the item for the cemetery report and the rubbish committee be added to item J on the board business, cemetery report removed to executive session.
And that, of course, under the justification of potential litigation.
Okay. And then the personnel matter would be also in executive session. Then item K to the board business would be the retaining of Butler Snow Law Firm in regard to the changes in the polling places in the districts of the thing, a discussion of that. Any other changes? With those changes, then, do we have an approval of the official agenda?
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda of Tuesday, May 16, 2006.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that?
A second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Bring us to the comments by the mayor and the board of aldermen. And tonight we have lots of presentations to make and proclamations to do. And I'll start off with our police department by saying that is the chief here tonight? Yes, sir. You're here tonight. All right. Congratulations goes to Chief David Lindley. He was awarded Meritorious Alumni Award for Criminal Justice by the Ole Miss Department of Legal Studies. Again, David, congratulations. I'm sure you took this as a short course and not a degree situation up there. Is that right? Thank you. The other item that I have tonight is a proclamation for Starkville in Motion, in which this is kind of interesting. I remember back in the early 60s that I purchased an Italian bicycle, and that I was going to get around about the campus on a bicycle in the 60s, and there was only one or two other bikes that were on the campus at the time. I had a blowout, and I went to Indian Cycle. Some of us that are old enough to remember Indian Cycle way back in the 60s, and the lady accused me of buying a communist bicycle and badgered me all the way out the front door for trying to get this. Tonight, I would like to bring this thing along and have a proclamation. Larry, you're in here. You remember my bicycle. I think Earl ended up with it, didn't he?
I'm not sure who wound up with it.
But you remember that.
Present that to Kathy.
No, you weren't here then. Do what?
Present that to Kathy.
Yes. Kathy, are you here tonight? I'm going to present this proclamation to you. This is a proclamation that the mayor is giving for Bike Week, recognition of Bike Week, that begins on this Friday, I believe, in which we're having a promotion for people to ride their bicycles to work.
Are you going to?
I have several, so I'll look at my option that morning.
Okay.
Whereas traffic congestion and fuel consumption are serious problems that expand with Starkville's population growth and economic development, and whereas bicycling is a vital mode of transportation that is quiet, clean, and healthy, whereas Starkville in Motion, an advocate of bike lanes, sidewalks, and trails in Starkville, has organized a promotional group, community, and a public awareness education program about bikes and bike safety, and whereas the month of May is Bike Month. Throughout the nation, SIM is focusing its energies on promoting Bike to Work Day. Now here, therefore, I, Dan Camp, Mayor of Starkville, Mississippi, do hereby proclaim that Friday, May the 19th, 2006, is Bike to Work Day in Starkville, and call upon all residents of the city of Starkville to recognize the value of quiet, clean, and healthy transportation. Thank you. And I hope that we see a bunch of you going to work on the bike lanes that we've installed that are approximately a year old, is that right? Not a year old, but 10 months. Thank you. Thank you for your efforts in order to make us a successful bike in motion community. We have a number of young people who have done outstanding accomplishments within our community, and I would like to recognize them tonight here and read them a recommendation and appreciation for their services. The mayor and the board of aldermen of the city of Starkville, Mississippi do hereby determine that it is proper this day to recognize the accomplishments of Mr. Stephen P. Lehman. Is he here? Mr. Lehman. Very good. Very good. Son of Mark and Mrs. Carol Lehman, that Stephen has filmed the Board of Aldermen meetings. This young man has been responsible for filming the Board of Aldermen meetings for the past 2 years, and will be interning at the MEG TV in California commencing June 2006, and has many accomplishments. Some are as follows. Stephen is a senior at Starkville Academy, was voted most likely to succeed in 2006, Who's Who among students in American high schools, 2004-2006 USAA National Science Merit Award, 2006 Who's Who National Honor Society, 2005, and that Stephen is a recipient of the Outstanding Musician Award, earned the Superior Drum Major rating in the Northwest Marching Competition, Mississippi Private School Association Marching Festival, and received a Superior rating as Drum Major at Drum Major Camp, University of Southern Mississippi, 2003, and that Stephen earned first and second and third places honors in various state and local science fair competitions. I, Robert D. Camp, Mayor of Starkville, Mississippi, do hereby proudly recognizes the accomplishments of Stephen Lehman. Oh, Stephen, if you'd like to come up and get this, we appreciate you being a member of our Starkville community. Congratulations to you, young man.
And Mr. Mayor, even with all that long list of accomplishments, I suspect he learned more about life filming these Board of Aldermen meetings than any place else.
I'm sure filming you helped to prompt him to get to California, PC.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Our next young man that we would like to recognize is Mr. Wade Spurlock. Are you here, Mr. Spurlock? That the mayor and the board of aldermen, the city of Starkville, Mississippi, who do thereby determine that it is proper this day to recognize the accomplishments of Mr. Wade Spurlock, son of Mr. Stan and Mrs. Ann Spurlock that Wade has many accomplishments. Some are as follows. Wade is a senior and a star student at Starkville High School and has received a perfect score on the ACT test. Perfect score, and is a member of the National Honor Society, Mu Alpha Theta Math Club, National Merit Scholar finalist, and has received the Mississippi State University Presidential Schillings Award, and that Wade is a recipient of honors as an outstanding sophomore student with awards in pre-calculus, calculus, physics, and was voted MVP of the football special team 11th, 12th grades, and that Wade attended Mississippi Governor's School summer of 2005, worked with the Starkville Youth Soccer Organization. I, Dan Camp, Mayor of Starkville, do hereby proudly recognize the accomplishments of Mr. Wade Spurlock on the 16th of May. Wade, congratulations. That's pretty hard to do that at 36 on that ACT. Congratulations to you, young man.
And Mr. Mayor, in addition to that, Wade, a contributing member to the Starkville High School baseball team.
That wasn't on my information sheet.
I understand that. I try to help you all I can.
Well, I realize that. Our next young man is Mr. Michael Lindsay. Is he here tonight? The mayor and the board of aldermen of the city of Starkville, Mississippi, do hereby determine that it is proper this day to recognize the accomplishments of Mr. Michael Lindsay, the son of the late Tom Lindsay and Ms. Gail Lindsay, that Michael has many accomplishments, some as follows. Michael is a junior at Starkville High School, is the only individual selected in his age group by Regional 3 Olympic Development Soccer Team in the state. Michael's soccer travels include the national demonstration team in California, the showcase at Disney World, Austin, Texas, and competition against the Madrid semi-pro team in Spain. That means you went to Spain and and that Michael has lettered in soccer and track at Starkville High School, where he's voted MVP 2005-2006, won 3 state championships with the Tupelo, and this is pronounced football, which is the European pronunciation. Am I not correct about that? Football team, and was selected by the Clarion Ledger as the first team All-State for soccer. Therefore, I, Robert D. Camp, Mayor of the City of Starkville, do hereby proudly recognize the accomplishments of Michael Lindsay. Michael, congratulations. Thank you, sir. It's with great pride that we have such distinguishing young people in our community to receive such recognition, and we hope that they set the examples for others to follow. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize these young folks. That brings us down to approval of the minutes of the regular recess meeting of March 21st. It seems like we've been trying to get March 21st approved for the last 2 or 3 times. Did everybody see any corrections? The corrections that were made to that?
These are the corrections.
I move that we approve the minutes of the regular recess meeting of March 21st, 2006.
Do we have a second to that?
I'll second.
We had 2 seconds.
And a third.
Okay, we have a second to that. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. We have public hearings. The first one is Ms. Ferguson, who will be asking, I think, for an ad in support. The information's on the table here for you. And I will ask her to come forward for her presentation. All right, basically what she's doing is asking for an ad for the Junior Miss Pageant Program, and I was under the impression she was going to be here to say, woo you all into, say, making arrangements to give her an ad. She does have her information on the table for you. What I'll do is give you a few minutes to look at that, and we can actually go to the next one with Scott Maynard, you can go ahead and say, give your report, and we can come back to item A if that's with permission of the board. Does that work?
Good evening. You all, I passed out this sheet. It's a quarterly report for Starkville Parks and Recreation. Overview tonight should be fairly short and concise. I wanted to give you an update on the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. That was the grant that we were awarded about a year and a half ago now for improvements to McKee Park. You'll see in there the before and after tennis court pictures. The tennis courts are now complete and operational there. And the next page is also score towers at each of the fields. Those are complete and operational as well. We have also met with Miss Whitney Hilton with Starkville in Motion, who gave us some suggestions on sidewalk improvements and ADA compliance improvements at McKee Park. We have completed those as well. We've added additional van accessible handicapped parking spaces and added additional sidewalks to make it easier for handicapped individuals to get around through the entire park. The remaining items on the grant include construction of a restroom facility and concession stand facility between the two main fields. That hopefully will be completed by the end of the year. We'll probably take bids on that in the next session next meeting we have, and that should be completed by the end of the year, and that will then put this grant to bed once the final approval's been given by the Land and Water Conservation Fund. The next item is the 2% bond issue. If my calculations are correct from Ms. Debbie Clark, the next payment on the previous 2% bond fund is due July 1st of '06. At that point, the remaining principal balance due on that bond is $1,020,000. The balance in the first 10-year 2% fund at the end of that 10-year period that's in the bank now is $1,414,758. So we have almost $400,000, $394,758 over the remaining principal. I would like for the board, and we will have to get clarification of the exact numbers from Debbie Clark, but I would like for the Board of Aldermen to consider approving the early payoff of that bond fund so that we can move forward issuing new bonds for the next phase of the 2% construction. The original bonds, although the 10% tax, the 2% tax was a 10-year, original 10-year time frame. The original bonds that were issued on a 15-year note. And those were issued by the city as opposed to being issued by the Park Commission. So, is there any discussion on that?
You don't have anything?
Nothing wrong with the proposal, you know, of course, we would just need to be sure we've got all the details, and facts, figures, information worked out, talk with bond counsel about advantages and disadvantages and so forth. Thus, we might want to formally or informally take that under advisement for a subsequent meeting.
Do we have a motion to take that under advisement? You make that in form
I
of a
would
motion.
make that in the form of a motion.
Do we have a second to that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to take that under advisement. The discussion to early payoff of the bonding indebtedness so that they can look at refinancing and doing something else. All of you hear the motion with a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Well, we will look at that request.
The next two updates we have are swimming pools. Moncrief Park is up and full of water and ready to go. We've already done lifeguard training there for this year. J.L. King Park Pool will be up and operational within the next week. So those should be right on time for operation for this summer. For the Whitfield Street property, we have planted trees there, and the recycling bins that were located there have been relocated. So we are in the process of beginning to organize that land as well. The last thing we have in the back of the last page of that handout you have there is just a summary of sports activity for this past year and the number of youth and adults that have participated, and a list of summer activities for Parks and Recreation outside the sports arena. In June, we've got kids crafts, creative crafts, beginning tennis, and ceramics class. July, we'll have another kids camp and another ceramics class. We also have a major soccer tournament coming in. That soccer tournament's actually going to span a period of 3 weeks. It's an international tournament, and we'll bring people from 5 different countries into Starkville for that time.
About 3,000 people, isn't it?
I believe that is correct.
Right, and in which we're doing this cooperation with the university, and they're housing some of the people and providing fields. All our fields will be up to date as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
They had a meeting today, as a matter of fact.
It's a big deal for us to have it this summer, let me assure you. We appreciate y'all's efforts in regard to that.
Any other questions?
Could you talk about, just a little bit about the soccer tournament we hosted? I don't know.
Yeah, we
2 or 3
hosted
weeks ago?
thank you. We hosted a North Half soccer tournament the same weekend of the Arts Festival, the same weekend of a SEC baseball tournament, and the same weekend of a softball tournament at MSU, which one thing I was glad to see was that the city went out and hosted multiple events in one weekend. I think we're finally to the point, size-wise and hotel-wise, we can do that and do that with confidence. That tournament brought in 96 teams to the city. Each team averages about 14 to 15 players, plus parents, grandparents, siblings. That was a lot of people in the city for that weekend. Went extremely well. From everyone I've talked with, there was a lot of positive feedback on that. So we hope to be able to attract that tournament again in the future.
I have a question. Do you know if there are any long-term plans to renovate the activity center in George Evans Park?
Activity Center in George Evans Park, yes. We have done some work over there.
Those things are underway as we speak, actually.
Okay.
And we will be restoring tile, we will be painting. We've already updated the roof and the play equipment and the basketball courts, and there are ongoing things right now.
Right. I've noticed a lot of
and
changes
play place.
recently.
We got a new play place.
And so you got some additional stuff to do to the basketball courts and other issues like that, is that correct?
Yes, sir, we're gonna paint.
Okay, I see Mr. Wilson Ashford here this evening, and those of us that live in that particular part of town, that's always been kind of a concern of ours, how those places are kept up and everything, and they've needed some help, I believe.
And all the lighting in that park has been replaced as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Charlie Johnson, are you here tonight? Okay. How you doing tonight?
Oh, doing good. Mayor, how are you? Give honor to the mayor and distinguished members of the Board of Aldermen and Alderwomen. I'm here to present to you a proposal, as I have done for the past 3 years. Our annual Youth Fest is coming up. I'm with the Apostolic Assembly of Jesus Christ, located down on North Lafayette Street. I'm a minister and spokesperson for the church. And we are asking to block off a portion of Lafayette Street, the one-way intersection between Lampkin and Main. As I said earlier, we've done this for the past 3 years. We have our annual Youth Fest, We have music, food, activities for the community to come out and enjoy. This opportunity gives our youth a chance to have something to work toward during the summer. So they all get together, make signs, design the booths, to something to occupy them during those summer months. Different activities that we will have will include face painting, dunking booths, basketball, apple bobbing, beanbag toss, limbo, Uno, memory games, checkers, chess, and some other games that we're getting together. We plan to put flyers up, visit different churches. So, of course, a non-denominational event, just inviting everybody, Christians, just whoever in the community to come out and enjoy some good music and good family fun. We're going to have a stage that's open to the public, so if you have a talent, you sing, you read poetry, things of that nature, you can come out and, maybe score yourself a record deal. Who knows who will be in the audience. So that's what I'm proposing.
Do we have any discussion? Apparently this has been very successful the last 2 or 3 years.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion?
I think Ms. Sells got a
Is
question.
there a date? Do you have a date for that?
Oh, yes, ma'am. July the 25th, 2006. It's the most important information, right?
Okay, thank you.
July 25th, 2006, we're asking for it from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. to accommodate setup and breakdown time.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion then that we approve the request to close Lafayette Street between Main and Lampkin on July 25th from 1 to 9.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. We have any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. Have a good festival.
Thank you.
I'd like to come back, Board, with your privilege to say, you've had an opportunity to say, look at the advertising contract that our junior miss is requesting the city of Starkville to, frankly, buy, add. She's not here tonight to tout her wares or whatever.
Ms. Sproul, did she specify what
Usually they
size
come in
ad
and
she
make a
wanted?
presentation to us. Have you never had a presentation made to you before?
Yes, I'm just not sure I've had waivers.
Well,
The ad that we put together for Miss MSU, did we put that together, or did she get that through Ducks to Locks? Do you remember?
Deb Schaefer at Dust Lux was kind enough to put that together gratis for the city.
What was the size of that one?
That was a full-page ad.
And cost approximately
300.
300. So this
Just
is
a half
450.
page for $250.
So is that your motion?
Oh, I will move.
Okay, that's it.
I would move that the city secure an ad in the Mississippi Junior Miss program, a half page in size, which can include a picture of our junior miss Tori Ferguson, and of course that the ad advertise the opportunities and resources available in the city of Starkville.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any further discussion? All of you have heard the motion with a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. Thank you, gentlemen, ladies. Brings us to citizens' comments tonight. The floor is now open for citizen comments. Nice button you got on there, Alvin.
Maybe it'll keep me out of trouble.
I hope so.
Or then again, maybe not.
Well, it depends on what company you're in, doesn't it, Alvin?
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. People have a few concerns. School soon will be out, and we know that the kids and stuff will have a lot of time on their hand, and we definitely do not want our students beating up police officers. And we hope that next time that it might not turn out like it did the last time. whether they're on duty or off duty. And June 6th is the primary election for the Senate. And that concern of citizens, we see that we have a meeting for that same day.
Thank you, Alvin, for your concerns and the people's concerns. Any other citizens? Brother Graves.
Mayor King, members of the Board of Aldermen. I'm Larry Graves. I'm here representing the Timber Cove Homeowners Association at the request of our president, who is out of town. As most of you know, Timber Cove has gone through a rather extended struggle over the past several years trying to protect our property values and maintain the safety of our subdivision. And over the past 4 years, we've appeared numerous times before the Planning and Zoning Commission, this board, and the previous board. Last week, the Planning and Zoning Commission met, and the issues that we had struggled with over those 4 years were resolved by means of a number of compromises. And we are certainly glad that it's over, and I know Mr. Morgan is glad it's over too. But having said that, we are also aware of some recent criticism of the Planning and Zoning Commission by a small number of people. And our observation of the commission over these 4 years has shown us that that criticism is unfortunate and unfounded. It certainly does not represent the feelings of the majority of people who have attended any of the planning and zoning meetings. We believe that the citizens of Starkville want and deserve the high standards that the Planning and Zoning Commission upholds, and we applaud them for doing a difficult and thankless job correctly. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to show that support for them here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name's John Gaskin, and I'm here on behalf of myself as well as the Academy Place Homeowners Association. And we would like to basically give our support to the Planning and Zoning Commission, just the same as Timber Cove just did. I know recently, just as they said, there's been a little bit of criticism about the strict standards that apparently the Planning and Zoning Commission have. I can tell you that basically we have been working with Mr. Morgan for the last 2 or 3 months. And basically, they put it in a way that neither one of us saw that we were going to get everything that they wanted, that we each wanted. And they put it in a way that we worked together and reached a compromise, which they approved last week. So I just want to go on record on behalf of our homeowners association and myself included, just to say that we feel the Planning and Zoning Commission has done an outstanding job recently, that they're trying to do their best to keep property values high. They're working in the spirit of the comprehensive plan, which when you look at some of the eyesores that have been built in Starkville recently, we desperately need the comprehensive plan and for to have good buffers between neighborhoods and to have good, solid built construction. I can tell you that I lived outside of Germantown, Tennessee for a year. In Germantown, you can't build BP stations couldn't put up a yellow and green sign up there for a short period of time, and it didn't halt the growth of Germantown. Granted, Starkville's a little bit different, but I guess what I'm trying to say is when you have very good zoning standards and that they're enforced properly, that helps benefit the community as a whole. It keeps the real estate values high for the residents as well as for anybody else who's going to come in, whether it be a commercial venture or what have you. So we just want to show our support for the Planning and Zoning Commission and show our appreciation for them helping us to reach a compromise with Mr. Morgan. Thanks for your time.
Anyone else? We'll move on to board business. The first 2 items on the board business have been moved to executive session. That's authorization to accept clear title and warranty deed to Oddfellow Cemetery located on Martin Luther King Drive, Highway 182, and authorization to go out for bids on an annual mowing contract for the same cemetery located at Martin Luther King Drive and Highway 182. We moved that to executive session, I believe, I'm reminding you of that. That brings us down to the next item on the agenda here is the authorization to hire Boyd Geiger as the Personnel Director for the City of Starkville. Greer, excuse me.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that the board hire Boyd Greer effective June the 5th, 2006 as new Personnel Director for the City of Starkville at the salary of $50,115.93, grade 16, step 3, and the board transfer Michelle Pope from the electric department to the mayor's office to serve as administrative assistant to the personnel director and reporting to the personnel director at her current compensation grade and step.
We have a motion that this gentleman be hired as our personnel director, and I think you heard the items that went with it, and his receptionist is a lady who is already salaried with the electric department as his assistant. Do we have a second to this motion?
Second.
Do we have a motion with a second? Further discussion?
I just have one quick question. Is Ed Hadaway here? Would a transfer of that person from the electric department cause any problems within your own department? Okay.
Are you gonna send her money over with her, Ed?
Yeah.
Is that a no? Okay.
And of course, it is assumed that the motion carries with it the standard probationary period of the city for positions of that sort. Does it not?
I didn't put that in my motion. You can amend it. Put it in there if you'd like. I didn't put it in my motion. I have a strong confidence that this man will do the job. He's got the past experience and the background whereby that I would not see that it would justify it, but if you wish to do it, that'd be fine.
Well, with his strong background and coming in as personnel director, I'm sure that would be one of the first things he would insist goes with every hiring, including his own. So I will move then to amend the motion to attach the city's normal probationary period of 6 months to this hire, as is the case with all city employees. 1 year, excuse me. 1 year, as is the case with all city employees of that rank and style.
We have a motion to add that as an amendment. We have a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Let's go back to the original motion now of hiring Ms. Greer as our personnel director. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. You will see, I guess, Ms. Burrell, that he's...
I'll be in communication with
The next item is adoption of a resolution to fund a maintenance plan in accordance with the proposed CDBG block, a Rock Hill sewage improvements project, with the presentation of Ms. Phyllis Benson, and I have a proclamation to read tonight. And I'm supposed to get excited after reading this. Is that right? We're getting closer.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Whereas the Mississippi Community Development Block Grant Program, the CDBG, that's a mouthful, has made funding available for improvements to the Rock Hill sewer system in the city of Starkville, and whereas the city of Starkville, Mississippi has specified obligations to maintain the sewer system within the municipality, whereas the city of Starkville, Mississippi, utilizing the city's maintenance staff, intends to maintain the aforementioned sewer system with a perpetual basis as a part of the city of Starkville's infrastructure plan, and whereas the city of Starkville, Mississippi, has the financial ability to maintain the sewer improvements upon completion of this community development block grant project. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the city of Starkville, Mississippi Board of Aldermen, and the city does hereby commit budgeted funds from the City of Starkville General Fund of approximately $800 per year. Is that all? Excluding inflation depreciation to be used as needed, realizing that failure to maintain the funded improvements will affect future funding from the Mississippi Community Development Block Grant Program. Adopted this the 16th day of May 2006 by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville in a regular meeting. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Just to remind you that back in February, the City of Starkville submitted a Community Development Block Grant application, which is referred to as CDBG, to the Community Services Division of the Mississippi Development Authority. Yours was one of 119 applications that were received requesting a little over $37 million. And the state only has $13 million to fund that 119 project. So obviously, not everyone is going to make the cut this year. The applications were reviewed, rated, and ranked, and then the next step is if your project scores high enough, the state comes to verify the information that was submitted in the application at a site visit. I got a call last Friday. Brenda Lacey with the Community Services Division will be here this Friday to verify the information. As she'll tell you, this is no guarantee that your project will be funded, but it is the next step. Obviously, without a site visit, you're not going to be funded. So the reason for this resolution, the state is not in the business of being a Band-Aid station. Once they give you seed money for a project, they want to ensure that you assume the responsibility of maintaining this project. So therefore, they're now requiring that you adopt a maintenance plan. And in essence, what the resolution stated was that we identified the project, what personnel would be responsible for maintaining the improvements. We stated the financial ability of the local government to maintain the proposed improvements. We identified the amount of money and the source of funds that will be used to maintain the improvements, and we acknowledged that failure to maintain the funded improvements would jeopardize future funding. I worked with the Public Works Director in pulling the information together. It is a gravity flow system. Hopefully won't require much maintenance. I will remind you, if this project is funded, it'll be to put the sewer in place in the Rock Hill area. All low to moderate income people that were determined and verified by the survey will be hooked up to the sewer system at no charge to them. That is a requirement of the CDBG program. Any questions?
Do we not need to adopt this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those who have heard me read it, we have a motion with a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I hand you a signed, delivered, and sealed, and hope that we get this thing.
Yes, sir.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
With the formulation of board policy, effectively leaving me without the opportunity to truly serve the constituents of Ward 6 and the citizens of Starkville to the best of my abilities. In addition to the action dissolving the Organization Operation Committee, 2 other substantial policy votes were held in a similar manner during my absence. Absences were treated differently during previous board terms. If the issue was one dealing with major policy consequences, the board, out of professional courtesy, would allow for all members to be present. With the exception of the Fedorovich matter, which was an illegal action, the remaining votes taken in this manner were technically legal. Legality aside, the actions taken in this manner most assuredly seem to indicate a lack of respect for me as the vice mayor and senior member of this board. I am sure that this was not the intention of my colleagues nor the mayor. Therefore, I move that the membership of the Budget Committee be increased by 2 members to bring additional expertise, experience, and vision to this committee, with Alderman McLaurin and myself being appointed as such. And that's in the form of a motion, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion that we add 2 members to the Budget Committee. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion with a second that we add PC and Roy to the Budget Committee. Do we have any discussion?
Well, Mr. Mayor, there's no question that this fiscal year upcoming is going to present us with some unique challenges. We have healthcare costs that are spiraling out of control. We'll have a presentation tonight that talks about just to maintain our insurance at its current level would be a 22% increase. We have fuel costs last year at this time, maybe last year at this time, around $2. Of course, we're now at $3. It's a significant impact. And then we have an infrastructure bond that we as a board will need to deal with, and not to mention an $8+ million justice complex bond that's so critically needed in our community. And so we have some unique challenges, and I think we're going to have a much better spirit of cooperation than we've ever had with this board and perhaps any other board, because of the nature of the challenges that are upon us. I'm not certain, though, if that's the problem we're trying to solve, that this would be the best recommendation for this board to consider tonight. Because it is somewhat of a, I'd asked for some information on this request, and I think Mr. Perkins is right when he talked about professional courtesy. I had emailed him on Friday when I heard of his request to change the budget committee that I chair, and he did not reply, and so I called him, and he answered the phone, and we had a nice conversation for about 15-20 seconds when he said, "I'll call you right back." I'm still waiting for that call, and so I think we're going to have to work differently together. I'm not certain that this is the right solution, and so what I'd recommend is that we table this recommendation until the next meeting. Let's work together, all 7 of us. Let's figure out what's the best way for us to manage these challenges for the community, because I think they're looking to us to work differently, to act differently. We're going to have to get it together as a community. If that's coming up with a committee of the whole, to have all 7 members of the board participate in the budget process. If that's changing the current members of the board, I'm concerned about this number of 5, in great part because if this board, this budget committee of 5, made a decision, then it would seem like to me we'd be leaving out the other 2 members who are not on that budget committee, and they wouldn't have a voice in that process. But again, I say that we've got multiple options here. I seriously question the judgment behind the recommendation, and I would move that we table this matter for the next board meeting where we can have more time to consider it and come up with a compromise that I think people are looking for, and I do in the form of a motion.
Are you interested in being on this? You were offered a position on it once before. You changed your mind the last 10 months.
Rejected the invitation at one time to serve.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
I hear you, Roy.
A motion to table is not debatable. Point of order.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second to the motion to table it?
I'll second.
All those in favor of tabling the motion, would you please raise your hands? All those in favor of tabling, that's 3. All those opposed? That fails, 4-3. It brings us back to the original motion to expand the committee from 3 to 5. Do we have any further discussion in regard to expanding it from 3 to 5?
Well, I'll say that I find myself agreeing essentially with both of my colleagues in that I believe that Alderman Perkins is right, and that he is not currently a part of any committee now, and if that's a desire of his, I think that we can remedy that. But I don't know that changing the structure of the budget committee is really the way to go about doing that. When you increase the committee beyond 3 members, you change the entire way that it's handled. It has to be absolutely under open meetings law. You have to make sure you're in complete compliance with that. And then you do get into an issue where if decisions are made within that committee without the other 2 members present, then it leaves an impression that those 2 members don't really have much of a say in the issues that come up. And so I really think that whenever you want to have a committee that's beyond 3 members, it needs to be a committee of the whole, where you have all 7 members present. Otherwise, I think our committees should remain as 3-member committees, and so I disagree with the idea of increasing the membership to 5.
To address a couple of points that have been made here, number one, all of our committees, whether they be 2-member committees or 7-member committees, are all subject to the open meetings law, so there is no change there. Secondly, Alderman Perkins is requesting that he be added to a standing committee of this city. I think we ought to give him that opportunity if he so chooses that for himself. Alderman McLaurin, you were part of this motion. Do you also want to be on the budget committee?
Given, of course, the challenges that Alderman Cox enumerated facing the city, I certainly think experience and knowledge can help in meeting some of those challenges, and I would be willing to serve.
As far as Alderman Cox's point about a 5-member committee seemingly making decisions that are going to be made, apparently last budget time a 3-member committee did that, because when amendments were offered, they were shot down, and we were told, why didn't you come to the committee meetings at that point? So 3 versus 5 versus 7, I see no difference. You know, if the 2 want to be on the committee, I don't really see how we can say, no, you can't be on the committee.
Well, I will say this, if this board is dead set on the idea of increasing our membership to 5, then I will in turn make my own request to be on it as well and increase the membership to a committee of the whole so that all 7 of us can be a part of this.
If you want to do that, that's fine with me. Alderman Perkins, would that be agreeable with you?
Well, you know, whatever the majority thinks, but I certainly know the 5 is better than the 3, and I'm certainly requesting to serve, and Alderman McLaurin has expressed interest in serving, and it's up to the board whether they want to have 6 or 7.
Well, I am a member of the Budget Committee, and I take this as a personal insult. We've been doing the job on the Budget Committee to the best of our ability in performing for the productivity of the city. And what's brought this about is a personal vendetta to accomplish something that's driving a wedge between one alderman to the other. And I resent us manipulating the committees like it is because of a vendetta. And I wanted to go on record that that is basically, in my opinion, the only reason that we're having this discussion. And I have great respect for Alderman Perkins of having his illness. I respect that. I have had 2 heart attacks myself, and you know, I had to work through that as everybody else that has health conditions.
Mr. Mayor, let me say real briefly, and I don't want to talk very long tonight, but let me just say that, you know, let's go ahead and vote for this, you know, and I'm going to briefly respond to what Alderman Mills said, just very briefly. He said this is a personal vendetta, and I'm just too professional to bring that up, but let me just say this. You know, I could sit here all night long and talk about the tape that I saw in the board meeting when my distinguished colleague from Ward 3 gave a report about the Operations and Organizations Committee. And as I watched the video, before Alderman McLaurin can finish his report good, my distinguished colleague from Ward 4 gets recognition from the floor and say, Mr. Mayor, I move that the Organization Operations Committee be abolished or disbanded. So if I want to talk about disrespect, I could, but I'm not here to do that tonight. So, and that just came out of the blue, the blue sky. I'm sitting there watching it on TV. So let's move on about this vendetta. Let's do about what's in interest. Here we have two senior members of the board, Alderman Perkins, Vice Mayor, on the board for 13 years. Alderman McLaurin in his second term. Alderman McLaurin, who has served as the Chief Administrative Officer of the city. What's the beef? Let's go ahead and approve the motion, move on, and there's no way it's going to be a disservice to the best interest of the city. Mr. Mayor, I yield the floor.
I would make a motion that we amend the original motion to have a committee of the whole to serve the city in the capacity of a budget committee, which would have every single member of this board on there. It's the only way that we'll be able to move forward with the issue in a way that that is appropriate. And I'm hoping that'll be acceptable to you. If your concern is that you want to participate, and now we have other members who also would like to participate, which, as I mentioned before, we have such unique challenges in front of us. We're going to have to work together, and frankly, I don't think we've done that good of a job of it. And you know, I know that for us, we don't have an election for another 3 years, so we can't get that report card from our bosses. But what I hear, they're pretty frustrated with the lack of compromise, the lack of teamwork up here as a board, and you know, like I said, we'll face that issue, and our election will be in 3 years.
Do we have a second to his amendment?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. We'll vote on the amendment to include all members of the board on the budget committee. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 3. All those opposed? You're in favor of that. All right. 1, 2. Raise your hands again.
The amendment for all of them.
B. That's correct.
Okay, because we are not inventing the wheel.
1, 2, 3, 4. All right. All those opposed? We have everybody in favor of the whole board and 1 abstention, unless he raised it.
I raised my hand.
Oh, I see. Okay.
When you call for it.
Be a little bit more cooperative on that end of the table, would you?
Y'all roping me into being on the budget.
All right, we have an amendment that all members of the board would be on the budget committee. We will now vote that all members will vote for the original amendment, in which we have PC and the amendment.
It's for
explain how that's
committee of the
going to
whole,
work.
Mr. Mayor.
Committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brings us to authorization to hire an in-house code compliance officer. This is a replacement of Alice Bassett, is that right? Alice?
Yes.
I move that we authorize advertisement for an in-house code compliance officer.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Authorization to hire George on a contractual basis of $70 per hour for planning services in the building codes and planning department. Yes.
You know, I've turned 65 now, and as a favor to the mayor, I will come back and be serving in the advisory capacity as the planner for the city for the next couple of months until we find somebody. But I cannot urge you strongly enough with the activity that we have going on in our department, and I talked about this to you last night. We probably are going to have 10 to 12 items on the planning commission agenda from now on, considering the level of activity in the city. And I urge you to really find a full-time planner. The department needs it because it's 3 separate operations up there. If necessary, contact a headhunter, of which there are several in the state that can locate these things. Because this is a position that cannot be filled temporarily or for a very long time.
Thank you, Mr. Rumble. Do I have a motion that we retain Mr. Rumble on a contractual basis for a couple of months?
I would move that interim city planner George Rumble be retained on a contractual basis for, you said 2 months, George?
Probably, yes.
For 2 months.
Second.
As an advisor to the Planning Zoning Commission, particularly with some upcoming projects.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Brings down to authorization to appoint Hugh Guin as the interim Building Codes Planning Department Administrator effective May the 27th.
Ms. Mayor and Board, I would recommend that we move this item to executive session for discussion of a personnel matter along with the others.
Second.
I have a motion to move this to executive session personnel along with some other items. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Brings us down to the Rubbish Committee. Mr. Mills, aren't you chairman of the Rubbish Committee?
Well, we had a meeting yesterday, and in my opinion, I think the sanitation and the contractor has done a great accomplishment. We hadn't had any complaints. They basically, the department head and the manager or the owner of the contractor have got together, and they basically worked out ways that they can accomplish cleaning up the streets of rubbish and dirt, limbs and so forth. There has been some discussion. We are going to have another meeting in reference to the additional cost that Ms. Boyd brought up that is a possibility, and we asked Alderman Davis to look at the ordinance and make some recommendations of adjusting the ordinance that would fit the criteria of keeping our streets clean. And we hopefully within a couple of weeks we will have a report back from Alderman Davis, and we can proceed on with it at that time.
Any other questions that you have of this committee?
Mr. McLaurin, he may have some comment, or Alderman Davis, you may want.
You covered it just fine.
That certainly was fine. There are a number of issues which remain to be resolved.
Yes. But I want to compliment the sanitation department head and the contractor for solving the immediate problem. We had so many complaints, and I believe we've had no complaints within the last 3-4 weeks, right? Okay, thank you.
Brings us down to item K, which is pertaining to Butler Snow Law Firm, and I suppose they're the ones that were basically in the federal court of compliance in regard to polling places and the redistricting. Is that correct?
That is essentially correct, Mr. Mayor and Board. Of course, the law firm of Butler Snow in Jackson, specifically Mr. Tommy Carden, and associated attorneys in that particular firm worked with the city extensively on the submission to the required submission to the Justice Department when the wards were redistricted after the last census, including establishment of polling places. And we still have a need to make some changes in 2 of the polling places. So I would move that Butler Snow, specifically Mr. Tommy Carden and his associates, be retained to prepare the submission to justice for their concurrence in our change in polling places.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
And then, Mr. Mayor, a related item specifically to get the situation moving along, since Butler Snow has been retained, I would move that the board give its approval of a change in polling place location in Ward 6 from Boardtown Village to Mount Pelia Missionary Baptist Church Fellowship Hall on North Jackson Street, and in Ward 7, again from Boardtown Village to the lobby of the Octavia County Circuit Court Annex building. We have secured in times past concurrence from Mount Pelia Missionary Baptist Church. Ms. Self has secured and brought to us the order of the Board of Supervisors indicating their concurrence in the switch for Ward 7 to the Court Annex building. And so I would move board approval of these changes in polling place locations for insertion in the proper resolution that Butler Snow will send to us in connection with this matter. The reasons, of course, for the changes after now a little experience using Boardtown Village are matters of ingress and egress, sufficient parking, handicapped access, crowded conditions, and so forth.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you, PC. That brings us down to the Department Business, Building Codes, and Planning Department. George, you got about 5, 6 items on here, 5 items.
Mayor, Board, the first item on this is prepared in conjunction with the city attorney, which is repealing ordinance 2002 concerning junk vehicles and dilapidated structures. The old ordinance that we had, and you should have a copy of this, primarily where the items that we have changed in this is our definition of junked vehicles, whereas before it just said or, and it became extremely complicated. We switched it over and just changed it to and, or. So therefore, any of the items that affect a dilapidated or a junked vehicle or how it operates. Whenever we go out, and Officer Lyles goes out and photographs these vehicles, then the picture is made with a date on it. And we do a 10-day count. Formerly it was 120 days to get this whole process. And so that's a quarter of a year basically to get this dilapidated or abandoned or junked vehicle taken care of. On the second page, items A and B under section 4, abatement or removal orders. This is the process where the owner is notified, and also that process is speeded up considerably too. I believe on the original it was 30 days on this. We turned it around to 10 days. We've had some very good results with this. A lot of it has been because of the effectiveness of Officer Lyles, which, for your information, in case you weren't there last night, we're probably going to be looking, or you will be looking for someone to replace him come the 1st of September because he plans to retire at that time. However, he and Hudolph Guin, who have been working together on this is their recommendations, both as the 10-day period to notify and a response by the certified mail within a 5-day return period. The same thing applies to the nuisance on a public property issue. And so we recommend your repeal of the old ordinance and adoption of the new.
Do we have a motion that repealing the old ordinance?
This is done on advice of council.
Mr. Faber, have you reviewed all of these and everything is in order relative to requirements of state law?
Absolutely, yes. I've reviewed it and I've drafted it, and we had several meetings to go over it, and also looked at the due process issues regarding the length of time, regarding 10 days versus 30 days, 120 days, and there's several communities throughout the state who use 10-day time periods. So I think we'll be in good shape regarding any due process arguments, the length of time.
All right, then, I will be happy to move, and we have before us the ordinance in writing as required by state law. An ordinance repealing ordinance 2000-2 of the city of Starkville, Octavia County, Mississippi, and adopting a new ordinance declaring the location or presence of junk vehicles within the city of Starkville a public nuisance, prohibiting abandonment of vehicles, restricting the disposition or keeping of wrecked, non-operating, or discarded vehicles on streets or private property, providing for proper impounding of certain vehicles and imposing penalties, and would further add, in addition to all these provisions of the ordinance, that ordinance 2000-2 go out of existence upon the effectuation of this ordinance pursuant to notice requirements and so forth by law. So the old one will stay in effect until this one is effectuated, given the publication requirements by state law and so forth.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Brings us down to the approval of site plan review for 20-unit condos on Yellow Jacket Drive.
Mr. Mayor, Board, this is a request by Jeremy Tabor for a 20-unit condominium complex composed of 2 triplexes and the remainder being duplexes, to be called the Annabella. And it will be at the intersection of South Montgomery and Yellow Jacket on the vacant property there now. The zoning is in compliance. The Site Plan Review Committee has reviewed this, and the Planning Commission recommends unanimous approval of this condo development project.
Do we have any discussion? Everybody's approved it. Do we have a motion that the board approve it?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
We have a second, but of course need a little bit of discussion here.
One thing, when I was flipping through this packet, I noticed that we have a private drive in this development, Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Josephine Street.
Yes.
And as I've stated at this table many times, and a variety of problems that come, and I will not be supporting this because it might be the most wonderful development, but I personally would rather see them dedicate those streets on the front end than us having to deal with the problems private streets cause down the road. And therefore, I will not be supporting this motion because of that, for long-standing philosophical reasons.
Mr. Mayor, I concur with the comments from the gentleman from Ward 1. I likewise vote against for the same reasons.
I would add, while I certainly understand my distinguished colleague's objection to private drives, private roads within developments, and I actually share some of those objections, having experienced the problems that can result, not always, but can result from this type of situation. I will be voting in favor of this particular motion, and would like to comment further. This, you heard public comments tonight about Planning and Zoning Commission and delay of projects and all this type of thing. This one, and having attended several of the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings lately, I watched the presentation of this particular project. Everything in order, the whole checklist followed, no bobble in any of the presentation, the ability to answer questions, to present everything to the Planning Commission's satisfaction, which shows that projects can move and move quickly if the developers carefully think through what they're doing and make sure they have met all the requirements of the city in connection with the project. Admittedly, no zoning requirement change, so that makes things inherently easier, but an excellent presentation, one well responded to by the Planning and Zoning Commission. While I understand my colleagues' objections, I'll be voting for this project.
Anybody else got objections or pros and cons? I think we've heard several. We have a motion on the floor. It's been accepted. Second, that we accept this this proposal. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? It passes. Request for approval of the preliminary plat for Northgate subdivision, Phase 4.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, this 4 should come before 3. Both of them were concerned with the same item. Mr. Wright is proposing an addition to Northgate subdivision. 5 of the lots in Phase 4 were in agriculturally zoned property. The remainder of the subdivision of the total 34 lots are in R1. So to bring all of the property into proper zoning compliance and to correct the split zoning, this was in existence when he brought the property. So to bring that together, the Planning Commission recommended that the zoning change be made first, changing from A1 to R1 in this particular piece of property, and then approving the preliminary plat of this subdivision. This often happens when property changes hands and people start assembling property for subdivision. So the Planning Commission recommended favorably on both of those.
I move approval of the zoning change from A1 to R1 for Phase 4 of Northgate subdivision as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And then approval of preliminary plat.
I was going to do it separately.
You need to do it separately.
All right. Do we have a second to approve the rezoning? Second. We have a motion with a second. All those in favor, please.
Mayor, hold just a second. Alderman Cox, would you add to the motion the board finding as fact that the requested rezoning meets the test and requirements of state law relative to rezoning of property as to need, as to character of the neighborhood, et cetera?
Yes.
Tammy, did you get all that?
On tape.
Okay, good. We have a second to that, I believe. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, Matt goes back up to the other item.
Move approval of preliminary plat for the Northgate subdivision Phase 4 as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. George, your very last thing.
Okay, this is request approval of a zoning change from an R1 to a PUD for Charles Morgan for the Carpentry properties. This was as a result of 5 meetings, but it was successfully concluded with agreement between the surrounding subdivisions, and the Planning Commission recommends approval of this.
Mr. Mayor, I move we accept the approval of the zoning changing from R1 to PUD by Charlie Morgan for the Carpenter property.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have further discussion?
And of course, inherent is that this meets the necessary requirements of state law relative to changes in zoning. And Alderman Mills, would you accept as part of the motion the placement into the minutes of the appropriate correspondence and agreement between Mr. Morgan and Timber Cove subdivision and Mr. Morgan and Academy Place subdivision?
Yes, I will.
All right.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes. Brings us down to the office of city clerk. Thank you, George. Yes, sir.
That is approving our plan, isn't it? It's not just approving the zoning change. We were supposed to approve the plan and.
I don't know, I'll have to go back and read and see how to. I can't answer that. But assume that because that was included.
He can always have it, I just don't, catching it all at one time, I mean, we need to start
Is there any way y'all could maybe adjourn a minute upstairs and take a look at the things so we can try to deal with this all tonight? I had understood that we were approving the PUD as well as the proposed development, but if I am in error, y'all might want to.
It has been duly authorized, and so it could be added as an amendment to this. We could go and look at the map right now. This has been authorized been advertised several times.
Okay. If y'all would, why don't you, I beg your pardon?
But it's gonna say the minutes only, from the planning and zoning, only talk about it as its own change. It's not a plot agreement. So then he doesn't get it.
Okay, if you would take a look at that, and then we can adjust this perhaps later in the meeting.
Y'all go ahead and take a look at it. We'll go on with this. We see y'all come back in, and we'll come back to you. Mrs. Outlaw?
Good evening, Mayor and Board. My first item on the agenda is the claims docket and with the payables procedures being followed. I do recommend approval of the claims docket and it went through May 11th.
Do we have a motion to approve the claims docket?
Move approval of the claims docket of May 10th, 2006, as recommended by the clerk.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Your next item, please, ma'am.
My next item is engagement letter from Watkins, Ward, and Stafford that I'm asking the board to authorize the mayor to execute. They have their audit objectives, and the amount for the audit is going to be no more than 23.6, which is the approximate amount of last year's audit. And I recommend that the board authorize the mayor to execute this letter of engagement.
I would move the retention of Watkins Ward and Stafford for completion of the audit for the city of Starkville for fiscal year 2006, and the authorization of the mayor to execute the engagement letter on behalf of the city.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
And my last item is the Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. We've shopped it out to several different insurance companies. Humana and Trustmark did not bid, said they refused to bid because of lack of data that we were able to obtain. The United gave back a quote that was more than the Blue Cross renewal quote. Blue Cross gave us several options, and it was our recommendation that we use option 7. It's on the third sheet, option 7, where the changes in benefits are going to be the copay for doctors are going from $25 to $40. The pharmacy deductible goes from $50 to $100 per annum, and the copay for the pharmacy goes from $5, $20, $35 to $10, $25, $50. But we do have several other options of the board's pleasure is to look at those. But we will need a response tonight because we are facing a June 1 deadline, and Blue Cross has to change their records to meet that deadline.
So why don't you tell them if we have no change at all in it, what that's going to cost us, how much more?
Okay, if we have no change, it goes from, if the benefits stay the same, it'll go from $266 to $325, which is roughly a 22% increase.
And now tell them what this new increase.
And the new increase of $305 is roughly 14%. And the per year amount is, for the $305, is approximately $121,000 per year. And I think the 325, if we went with the same benefit package, was up to 200 and, I want to say it was 270,000.
270 or 7?
70. It was 270.
And what was our total package that we paid last year?
The total package last year was it was 87 monthly, which was, with the 293, was it?
$87,000 monthly.
It was, yeah, it was 287 monthly. And it was 1,000,000, it was like 1,100,000, somewhere in there. And the increase this year will range anywhere, just depending on the option that you choose, from 1,200,000 to $1,372,000.
So it's about $175,000 difference in keeping what we presently have.
Yes.
Versus going to this other scenario that you're.
That's correct.
Now, I might say in regard to this that the guy who looked at this even looked at, say, going up on the deductibles, and that really didn't save any significant monies. That most of the monies were saved in regard to the copay issues of the pharmacy and the doctor.
The pharmacy.
Right.
Deductibles.
So the deductible, hospital deductible has not changed?
No, it did not change.
And the pharmacy deduct, I think you said goes from 50 to 100.
But that's cumulative, I think, Roy.
Per annum, yearly.
You know, of course, Ms. Outlaw said we needed to do something tonight. She did not take into consideration if we were willing to have a quick special meeting between now and then.
Well, Blue Cross has given me a deadline tomorrow noon.
You gonna have a special meeting in the morning for breakfast?
We certainly could.
We could.
You bring the donuts.
We're gonna meet at the bagel
Sausage
shop.
and egg, biscuit.
Okay.
Lynn, do you have anything you'd like to add to this that we may have left out some points you were?
Well, no, I mean, when we met with you and the representative, we discussed the 22% versus the 14% and how we could bear some of the cost and yet have the employees share a little bit of it. And that was the reason for the $50 deductible up to 100 for prescription.
Right.
And changing the copay. We're trying to ease the burden on all concerned, or share the burden.
Basically, we've had some very large claims in the city in the last year or so, and we're paying the price of it.
And the experience is going down, but
It's not going down fast
it didn't go
enough.
down
no.
enough for Blue Cross to take that into consideration, for it to be a major factor in that.
What would be the pleasure of the board?
And there are several options on the page here.
To keep the coverage of the same and not pay any increase.
Well, yeah, we all want that.
But that's not one of the options.
Well, if we kept the same coverage, the 22%, they worked it down from 27%, which was originally.
Exactly.
And we asked them to go back and look at it again, and it came down to 22% to retain the current coverage that we have. And it's significant, it's a $20,000 a month increase.
course, those of us covered under the state employees system and so forth have experienced increasing deductibles and co-pays and all that type of stuff too. It's not something unusual.
Private sector experiences exactly the same thing.
Some of us that have been in the private sector as small individual people are elated over the fact that we can even get something for less than 10 grand deductible. Is that right, Mr. Cox?
It is.
I am now. Haven't been for the last 25, 30 years, 40 years. God, it might even be 50 years.
Of course, from a budget perspective, you've got to look at the consideration of if the city decides to absorb most of this cost, that may reduce funds available for employee raises. You know, there are all sorts of balancing acts that might have to be done here.
We find ourselves having to do it outside the budget year, which makes it a little more problematic.
Of course, yeah, usually happens that way. In insurance. And no way to guesstimate what's going to happen. Let's hold this for a few minutes and move on and come back to it tonight.
We'll come back to it after before we leave. Georgia, did you come up with something?
Yes, we did. The way the minutes read, Commissioner Mullinax made a motion to recommend the zoning changes to the mayor and board provided the change are made and reflected in the code. The code is contained in the plat, so therefore we adopt the plat at the same time we should adopt the zoning change.
So we don't need to go back and revisit. Okay.
I would certainly make it a little clearer, I think, on that that's the case.
We went back to look at the actions of the site plan review when they were reviewing the plat, which constituted the whole thing, and all the way through. The plat was recognized as being guided by the PUD regulations.
Right. And not disagreeing, I just know that come down the road, it would be better to have it much more clear than that. Ms. Tyndall, can we go back to exactly what motion was made?
You just approved the zoning change. That's all you approved.
So all we approved was the zoning change to a PUD, I believe is the only thing we approved.
Yes, and perhaps the board might wish to consider amending that approval with the addition that the plat that goes with this PUD be approved in preliminary form.
Regardless of how the planning commission minutes read, I have attended all those meetings and know that their intent was to approve the development as outlined on the plat.
Make a motion.
Make a motion.
Well, I'm trying to sit here a minute and think whether we should just rescind the other one or try to amend it. Let's rescind and start over, just so that we're clear.
Okay.
So I would move that we rescind the motion adopted earlier tonight to approve the zoning change from R1 to a PUD for the Carpenter property development, Charlie Morgan.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Well, that was a miserable
And then would move that we approve a zoning change from R1 to a PUD for the Carpenter property under consideration, including the planned unit development proposal as outlined on the plat considered by the Planning Zoning Commission. All of this subject to placement in the minutes of the letters of agreement between Timber Cove subdivision and Mr. Morgan, and Academy Place subdivision and Mr. Morgan. The intent being that approval is conditioned upon all those agreements being abided by, implemented.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do we have a second?
Test and requirements of state law.
Yes, and that the change in zoning meets all the necessary tests required by state law. Appropriate tests.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Well, let's raise hands. All those in favor of the motion? 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 5 to 2. It passes. Brings us down to court administration.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
Ready to go with all the duties.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the hiring of Lauren Lucas and Shalonda Sykes as deputy court clerks at grade 7, step 1, which is $20,033.98. Is put them on the 1-year standard probationary period.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We're going to take just a 2 or 3 minute break here, and we'll come back with the fire department.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
The interview and testing board consisted of Battalion Chief Terry Doss, Battalion Chief David Godin, Fire Marshal Roger Mann, Fire Marshal Steen McMullen, Training Officer Keith Keinert, and Sergeant Dwayne Davis, and they recommend the hiring of Mark McCurdy.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we hire Mark McCurdy as fire inspector, grade 12, step 1, $32,264.92 with the probationary 1-year period.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes. Brings us down to the police department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
That wasn't nearly as bad as what you'd anticipated. Is the chief around? There he is. I can't see you back there. You hiding back there. Direct line.
I have 2 items before the board tonight. One is a report on the feasibility of combining Starkville Police Department dispatch with 911. I've been meeting with Mr. Britt, and he is preparing the county's proposal. He has requested more time to get that refined and finalized.
He's requested more time?
Yes, sir.
They approached us 9-10 months ago.
I originally started talking with him about it.
2 years ago?
Almost a year ago. After the budget committee directed me to do so, and of course, I think they did some work on it at that time, and then Katrina came along, and after our last meeting, we discussed it again, and of course, they're in the process of determining if they're gonna be able to build a new building or not. There are many things they've got going on budget-wise. I believe they're trying to
So I guess we're in a situation to wait to hear back from them after their proposal. Okay. You want to go on to your
I'm sorry,
second?
I had stepped out. Is that what you want to do?
Yes, sir, I believe that would be in the best interest.
Okay.
Item number 2 is authorization to declare city property as surplus and dispose of same. We've got quite a bit of surplus property that has accumulated in the rear of this building, and Ms. Spruill and I discussed this, and I let some of my staff get workers together, and we inventoried all of this. And the proposal I want y'all to consider tonight is this. Some of the things we're going to dispose of are a number of vehicles that are currently housed at the city barn, 6 of which were drug seizures, and 8 of which are retired from the fleet, former police cars. None of these vehicles, I suspect, have very much value. However, the barn needs a space, and we'd like to make something productive out of these more or less junkers that are sitting down there and get them off our inventory. So the first request is that the surplus property of the city of Starkville, it's been inventoried and is ready for disposal by auction. This surplus property specifically is retired vehicles and other vehicles that have been seized and are of real no further use. And the second being all of the other items such as computers, office furniture, and the like to be included in this auction as well. I believe I've forwarded copies of the vehicle list and the items to be inventoried. The recommendation would be the police department requests authorization for the auction and to have the proceeds of the sale of the vehicles, number 1 above, placed into our line item for vehicles. This will be added to the insurance settlement to go with a car that one of our newer units that recently caught fire and burned. I'm going to try and take the insurance money from it and whatever we can get from the salvage auction and hopefully be able to buy a replacement unit, a new unit. And the other matters would be the other equipment such as office equipment. Of course, we want to have the auction authorized where we can add that to the general fund or whatever is normal procedure. And that would be my request.
Do we have a motion to authorize the surplus property?
Move approval, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon me?
I move approval.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, David. This brings us down to public services.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. One item I have tonight is request to advertise for sealed bids for boring under the Kansas City Southern Railroad and Mississippi Highway 12 west of Starkville. We had been going under the assumption that we had this covered under source of supply contracts, but we were wrong, and we don't go up this high in our source of supply items. So tonight I request your approval to advertise for sealed bids, because we anticipate it's going to exceed the $15,000 threshold that's required for sealed bids. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do I have a motion that we advertise for bids?
I would move we advertise for bids for boring under Highway 12 and the Kansas Southern Railroad right-of-way.
Do we have a second to that?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Sanitation Department.
Mayor and Board. I have one item on the agenda. I'm here to ask for the approval to purchase now a rear loader garbage truck from the best bid, which is Ingram Equipment, in the amount of $138,937.80.
Do we have a motion to take the lowest and best bid?
So moved. Just for clarification, it's not lowest bid,
It's not the
correct?
lowest bid, it's the best bid.
Best bid, okay,
Best bid.
excuse me. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
and we should specify in the minutes what makes this the best bid.
And do you have that information for making this the best bid?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You have it in your packets also. I had, that was my first, one. I came back to my front loader. That was my best bid for the rear loader also, which I postponed that one. And I got the assistance from the Director of Public Services, Mr. Devlin, and he agreed with me this was the best bid.
We have a motion and a second to accept the best bid.
What we're trying to determine is why is it the best bid?
Okay. All right, the PACMAC bid, because it has a 25 cubic yard packer versus our spec bid, which is 32 yards. 32 yard packer. Reject the Empire truck sales bid with the leashed body. The bid did not include any factory specification sheets for the leashed body for comparison to your spec bid specs. And they were only found when we went to the website, there was a federal announcement that with uncertain future and inability to verify actual factory specs, we stay away from the lease project. They were being sold out. This left the two lowest bidders, which was Empire Truck Sales, New Way Body on the Sterling chassis, in the amount of $136,800. Ingram Equipment Sales Hill Body on a Freightliner chassis in the amount of $138,937. The Empire Truck Sales bid did not include the factory specification sheet for the New Way Body for the comparison to the bid specs. We went to the website and compared two units, Josh bid specs on the components, and when they were verifiable, published information was available. But still, all items to yield strength equivalent thickness so that they can be compared on a apples to apples basis. This comparison is attached. The conclusion we came to, the New Way Body did not comply with the bid specs on 4 different items. The Howe body met or exceeded all specifications that were listed. By comparing the yield strength equivalent thickness, the Howe body is far superior, and you can expect a life longer service than the New Way.
It appears even from the last sheet that you provided in the packet that the heel body exceeds the New Way body chassis in just about every component.
Yes, sir. And it's the difference in the amount is $2,137.
Not to mention that there are components on the New Way chassis that don't even meet specifications.
Exactly.
We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. Would you like to, at this time, reconsider the health insurance, or would you like to still hold this in abeyance before we leave tonight? Would you like to go into closed session to discuss whether we should go into executive session? I tell you what, I'll just take a break and let y'all decide what you want to do. But I would recommend that y'all make a decision. The only items that we have on our agenda are the health care issue and personnel and litigation issues in the executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we take a 5-minute break.
Just had one. Guess we can take another one. We'll declare a 5-minute break.
life support.
Okay, did any of you have an opportunity to say, look at this Blue Cross Blue Shield issue? I saw Ms. Outlaw down there assisting some of you on that end of the table with costs and some other issues. So it's still not at any resolve?
Let's review a minute. To keep it just like it is, where's Ms. Outlaw?
She's running some numbers on the.
Oh, okay,
It was approximately $175,000 more a year to keep it like it is. Is that correct? 240, close to 250, to keep it like it is.
Yeah, but that's including that dental. What that's gonna be. Right.
To take the 14% increase in, is approximately, we say 14%, about $12,000 a month, 13,000, is that right, Lynn? So it's gonna be around 160,000 a year with just, reducing it down. So we're having net savings of approximately, I want to say 100.
Well, and that's why I bring up the dental, and that's what Ms. Outlaw and I were talking about, and what she's adding up right now is that big figure, the 240 includes the dental, and, well, I'll let her explain what.
How much?
61,000 per year.
For the dental?
No,
No.
for the difference
This is
between
the difference between the option 7 that we're proposing in the.
keeping the current.
Okay.
Option
61,000
was an increase.
Right, I mean, it's 61,000 over that increase.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, over that increase.
Making the assumption that we're gonna pay an increase, it's just how big an increase.
So keeping it as the same is in, versus the 22% increase versus the 14%, overall is $61,000. Is that correct?
Difference.
The difference.
The 14, the, keeping it the same will probably, it ranges to 100 and, about 80 to 190,000. This one, the 121,000 is the increase above what we are currently paying. And then the 60,000 is gonna be an increase above the 14, the option 7, the 14%.
So the net savings with all the increases is about 61,000 to keep it the same versus the 14% increase.
That's right.
So I guess that you got to take consideration, or you wouldn't spend another $61,000 over the other increase. How much will the other increase of 14% run?
121,000.
Okay, $121,000 more anyway. This would add on another 61,000 to that.
Not including our dental increase.
Yes, correct. But the dental didn't give us any options.
It's increasing one way or the other, but it's an added cost on top of it.
The the life insurance did go down.
No, the life stayed the same.
Oh, it stayed the same? I thought the figures they were showing us, they were a lot less per thousand.
How much did the dental increase?
It went from
$14 to $17.
yes to 1476 to 1702
Per person?
per person.
Upon the recommendation of the city clerk and the chief administrative officer, I recommend that, and do so in the form of a motion, that we accept option 7, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's a blue card plan for the city of Starkville insurance.
Do we have a second to that motion? Do we have a second for that motion? Apparently not.
The night is not open. Yes, both of you calm down. As an aside, Marquita, this next year, let's try to get these things earlier so we have more time to compare with what the state employee health plan is doing, all this type of thing, because it's a difficult decision. Yeah.
Allow me to defend Marquita. It really has not been. We pushed the representative a number of times, and he's had issues that he's been unable to get information. So we brought it to you as soon as we were able to get it.
Right, wasn't a matter of defending Marquita. That was not criticism, saying, well, next year, let's try to get this stuff earlier so we can have more time to deal with it.
I believe we did start this about 6 months
We
ago.
started earlier, but, and things did, kind of push it back, but we will
Stuff happens.
make that attempt for next year.
We have a motion, we're needing a second.
I'll second the motion of Alderman Cox.
The motion that's to increase this was shown on the information that was handed to us in our packet, or provided to us in the packet, with all the increases.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion, let's show by hands. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 2. All those opposed, raise your hands. Looks like the motion fails. So I guess we won't have medical insurance.
Will we, yes, can I answer any questions?
No, it's just a struggle if you sit here and think, well, what in the world could they be thinking about? It is a struggle sitting here thinking, does the increased cost, is it justified to keep the insurance the same? Or should this be more of a sharing on the part of city, the taxpayers, and the employee?
In defense of the employees, I raise those very issues that you just talked about. Simply because some of us, as I said before, had as much as $5,000, $10,000 deductibles. I was very much looking at, say, going to a $1,000 deductible. I was very much in favor of looking at some of the employees paying a part of the insurance as such. And I was told and suggested by some of the department heads out of a committee type of consortium that the people of this city have not had a raise of any significance in the last how many years? 5 years, 6 years, or whatever. And that to a person who had adequate funds, that $5, $10, or $20 wouldn't make any difference. But to a person that we pay, have you looked at some of these wages that we pay folks? You looked at truck drivers that handle a heavy equipment stuff that make less than $20,000 that I see in the sanitation department last meeting, and you wonder how anybody is able to say even making a living from that standpoint. If you look that there have not been satisfactory raises in the last umpteen years, I was scolded as the mayor to even suggest that folks that did not get a raise in the last number of years, that you're going to set this thing up and you're going to make some of the folks out there that really dependent upon this